whole place capsize. Not side. Come on, no man. Run road, we outside. Run road. This week we had us mash up party. We had us mash up fest. This we had us mash up party. 473 so we went. This we had us mash up parties. We had us mash up fest. We had us mash up party. Run road team we do it best. This week we had us mash up parties. We had us mash up fest. We had us mash up party. 473 so we went. We had us mash up parties. We had us mash up fest. We had us mash up party. Run road team we do it best. Like Skilly Beg we have the whole place locked. We running road non-stop. We play mass real mass and is that. And if you want to find us, well we day up now. When I say to run up and down, just come and no man. No racks up and wave up your hand. Drink rum and start to get on. Play mass, just come and no man. This week we had us mash up party. We had us mash up fest. This we had us mash up party. 473 so we went. This we had us mash up parties. We had us mash up fest. We had us mash up party. Run road team we do it best this week. We had us mash up parties. We had us mash up fest. We had us mash up party. 473 so we went. We had us mash up parties. We had us mash up fest. We had us mash up party. Run road team we do it. When we play in mass, you know we going all in. We drinking mad dog, telling we don't want no soft thing. We pumping all night. We going till the morning. And we don't want nobody come and tell we nothing. When I say to run up and down, just come and no man. Put your rags up and wave up your hand. Drink rum and start to get on. Play mass, just come and no man. This week we had us mash up party. We had us mash up fest. This we had us mash up party. 473 so we went. This we had us mash up parties. We had us mash up fest. We had us mash up party. Run road team we do it best this week. We had us mash up parties. We had us mash up fest. We had us mash up party. 473 so we went. We had us mash up parties. We had us mash up fest. We had us mash up party. Run road team we do it best. Like Skilly Beg we have the whole place locked. We running road non-stop. We play mass real mass and is that. And if you want to find us, well we day up now. When I say to run up and down, just come and no man. Put your rags up and wave up your hand.
Greetings and salutations one and all.
Play mass, just come and no man.
Welcome to the night shift with DJ Kevin Stew. Welcome to the month-long celebration. Yeah, best believe we're celebrating all month long.
We don't make the whole place capsize.
Those of you who know and sent greetings, I thank you. Those of you who are about to send greetings, thank you too. Yeah, I did celebrate another trip around the sun this past weekend, and so we're celebrating all month long.
We had us mash up party. We had us mash up fest. We had us mash up party. 473 so
yeah, so it carries over and it carries on.
We had us mash up fest.
I wanna thank you each and everyone for logging on.
We do it best like Skilly Beg. We have the whole place locked.
Much love to everybody locked in right now.
Running road non-stop.
Those on TuneIn Radio.
We play
on the night shift with DJ Kevin Stew. Welcome.
To find us, well we day up now. When I say to run up and down, just come and
much love to the massive healing from across the pond. The One Ham on the radio. Top of the morning to you guys over there in the UK. King Genius, Queen Genius, much love, much respect.
This week we had us mash up party. We had us mash up fest.
Big ups to the massive healing out of New York.
This we had us mash up party.
An island worldwide exhibiting the power of music.
We do it best this week. We had us mash up party. We had us
much love China Nicole.
Mash up party.
Blessings Gary.
We had us mash up party.
Big ups to the Jump Out production crew.
We had us mash up party. We do it when we play in mass. You know we going all in.
Big ups to those out of New Jersey.
No one no soft thing. We pump
on Reggae Pulse Radio. Much love to you. DJ Atomic Force. Much love, bro.
We nothing. Run up and down, just come and no man. Put your rags up and wave up your hand. Drink rum and start to get on.
Big ups to those who are locked in on the Foundation Radio Network. ClintonLindsay.com.
This week we had us mash up party. We had us mash up fest. This we had us mash up party. 473 so
much love, Mr. Lindsay.
Mash up parties. We had us mash up fest. We had us mash up party. Run road team we do it best this week. We We are those mash up parties. We are those mash up fest. We are
big ups to the massive healing out of Texas. WGLRO, Aloha Radio, Deucing Media Group. Blessings, blessings, blessings. Those who are locked in on PEMGTV.com.
We are those mash up parties. We are those mash up fest. We are those mash up parties. 473 so we
those locked in on Facebook Live.
parties. We are
Those on YouTube Live.
those mash up parties.
Those on Clubhouse.
With best we are those mash up parties. We are
Those who are locked in at the home of the night shift to DJ Kevin Stew, KevinStew.com, where you're encouraged to have acceptance through enlightenment.
mash up fest. We are those mash up parties.
Big ups to you, so glad to have you.
We are blue.
Couldn't do it without you.
Yourself.
And you have my word, I wouldn't even try.
We play mass real mass and is that. And if you want to find
Because without all of you, this wouldn't be possible.
don't just come a no man. Put your rags up and
I appreciate love the support.
drink rum and start to get on. Play mash.
And you're always invited to call a friend, tell a friend, friends of your friends, friends of your enemies, enemies of your friends, and your enemies too.
We are those mash up parties. 473.
Because it ain't for good for everybody.
We are those mash up parties. We are those mash up fest. We are those mash up parties. Run
I want to say thanks to my segment sponsors.
parties. We are those mash up fest. We are those mash up.
Policy Media Group, and being in a moment is priceless.
We are those mash up parties.
Go ahead and give them a call.
We are those mash up parties.
754-999-1140.
We going all in. We drinking mad dog.
They take care of everything you see here on KevinStew.com and more.
We going till the morning. And
They host my website and they can host yours too.
in. When I say to run up,
Not only that, they can provide you with streaming services.
up and whip up your heart.
That way,
Drink rum.
you can stream that event,
Play mass just for
that church service, that wedding, that funeral, that seminar, that party, that graduation, you name it.
We are those mash up
You can stream it live on a secure platform, whether yours or theirs.
parties. We are those mash up fest.
Just give them a call, 754-999-1140.
We are those
That's 754-999-1140.
mash up party. 473 so we wet. We are those mash up party.
I want to say thank you to Althea and her Healing Heavenly Hands.
So party run working we do it best.
Althea is a licensed massage therapist operating out of Broad County, North Miami-Dade and South Palm Beach counties. She comes to you,
Mass and is that.
bringing her table, her oils, and over 20 years massage therapy experience.
When I say to run up and don't just come a no man. Put your rags up and whip up your
Give her a call today, 954-655-9000.
Is we don't make the whole place capsize. Not side.
She only has one request outside of paying her. That is to get off her table and go sleep somewhere else when she's done.
Is we are those mash up party.
Believe me,
So we wet. Is we are
once she lays those hands on you,
we are those mash up. Run working with
you guaranteed to pass out.
parties. We are those mash up fest.
You'll be so relaxed,
Mash up parties.
there's nothing else left for you to do.
Mash up parties. We are those mash up fest. We are those mash up party. Run working with.
Hence the disclaimer.
We have the whole place.
She requests one thing.
We running good.
Get off her table and go sleep somewhere else.
We play mass real mass and is that. And if you want to find us, well we did.
Thank you to Reggae Global Entertainment.
Come a no man. Put your rags up and
Reggae Global act as your booking agent, handle your tour management,
come and start to get on.
take care of your business registration, legal service referrals, music production, marketing and promotion, and much, much more.
We are those mash up fest. Is we are those mash up party. 473 so we wet. Is we are those
Give them a call, 954-804-8199.
run working we do it best. Is we
That's 954-804-8199. Or check them out online,
473 so we wet.
reggaeglobalentertainment.com.
Mash up fest. We are those mash up party. Run working we do it when we play.
Tell them you heard about them from Kevin Stew, yeah?
We drinking mad dog. Tell them we don't want no soft thing. We pumping all night. We going till I'm
I
out.
want to say thank you to Mike Neal Trucking.
Nobody come and tell we nothing. When I say to run up and don't just come and
Mike Neal Trucking is a veteran-owned mover
whip up your
in the state of Florida.
drink rum and start to get on.
Also licensed and insured.
Come on, no man. It's we.
So you want to move from Palm Beach
We are those mash up fest. Is we are those
to Pebble Beach.
cemetery so we wet. Is we are those mash up parties. We are those mash up fest. We are those mash up party. Run working we do it best. Is we are those
From Naples to Jacksonville.
mash up fest. We are those mash up party. 473 so we wet. We are those mash up parties. We are those mash
From the Keys to Tampa
up
or
party.
Pensacola.
Do it best.
Doesn't really matter.
We have the whole place locked. We running.
You don't have the manpower, you don't have the transportation.
We play man.
Even if you want to put some things in storage,
And if
you
you
can give them a call.
well we day up now.
McNeil Trucking, 954-406-9740.
And wave up your hand. Drink rum and start to get up.
That's 954-406-9740.
We are those mash up party. We are those mash up fest.
McNeil Trucking. They have your goods in good hands.
Party, run routine, we do it best is we are those mash up parties. We are those mash up fest. We are those mash up parties. So we went. We are those mash up parties. We are those mash up fest. We are those mash up party. Run routine, we do it best like Skilly Bell.
Numbers to call, numbers to text to get you in touch tonight remain the same. Line is open.
Mashril Masan is not. And if you want to find us, well,
773-789 Stu is the number to get you in touch.
come on, no man.
773-789-7839. You can call, you can text, you can WhatsApp, you can Telegram.
This week we are those mash up party. We are those mash up fest. We are those mash up.
Either way, you get in touch live on 11 Color. Of course, you can also jump into the stew pot. Those of you wondering, what is the stew pot? It's what others call a chat room. But because we're fancy on kevinstew.com, it's called the stew pot. Jump on in. It's free. You don't need to register. You don't need to offer your firstborn, an internal organ, or a blood sacrifice. Just go to kevinstew.com and boom, you're in. You can remain anonymous. You can give your name. Either way, we just ask that you be there and show your presence.
This week we are those mash up party. We are those mash up fest. We are those mash up party.
Yeah, you have some people that like to mash up parties, you know.
We are those mash up parties.
Whether it is a victory party, graduation party, it doesn't really matter. It's like mashing up parties. And sometimes they try to do it just before you have reason to celebrate. So, like, you get voted into a particular office. So how do they go about doing that? Well, they prevent the vote in the first place. So if you don't get the vote, you can't win. You see how that works? Right. So tonight, what we're doing is we're talking about vote suppression. And with elections in the year, here in the United States, they have a midterm election coming up tomorrow, officially. Early voting was going on until yesterday. But here we are, midterm, and elections happen tomorrow. Here's the thing. There's this little thing called voter suppression. Ever heard about it? Well, according to demandthevote.com, voter suppression is any effort that can prevent eligible voters from registering to vote or voting. Suppressing the vote is generally achieved by passing laws that restrict the right to vote. But it can also take the form of governments allowing private citizens to intimidate voters or elected officials, spreading lies or misinformation to undermine faith in the electoral system. Efforts to suppress the vote in America are primarily supported by Republican officials at every level of the government so they can tilt elections in their favor or remain in power by making it difficult for voters to vote them out of office. Now, I beg to pose a question to demandthevote.com. Why say Republican officials and not just say party officials? Because is this to say that it's only one party, one group that engage in the practice of suppressing votes? Regardless of party affiliation, most Americans support issues such as criminal justice reform, fair and equal wages, fighting climate change, protecting LGBTQ plus and BIPOC rights. That's a BIPOC. accessible and affordable health care and immigration reform. Unfortunately, today's Republican Party is opposed to most, if not all, of these policies. In fact, their focus seems to be remaining in power despite being unpopular with the majority of Americans. But by making it harder to vote, they can still win elections despite only having the support of the minority of voters. Now, let me make sure that you understand this. This broadcast is not in favor of any particular party. That's not what we're about. That's not what we do. So let me just make sure that that is known first and foremost. Now, even though voter suppression is often discussed in terms of Democrats and Republicans, it isn't a conversation about left versus right, but about right versus wrong. In 1787, the majority of eligible voters consisted solely of property-owning or tax-paying white male citizens, which was only about 6% of the American population. However, over the next few decades, the requirements of owning property or paying taxes were relaxed or repealed. That said, women and people of color still had limited access to the ballot box or none at all. After the Civil War, all male citizens, regardless of ethnicity, were finally given the right to vote with the passage of the 15th Amendment in 1870. In response, white men, primarily in the southern states, embarked upon a campaign of violence and electoral fraud to ensure their continued victories at the ballot box. And by 1894, most of the protections put in place to enforce Reconstruction had been repealed or ruled unconstitutional, which left the states free to pass regulations like poll taxes. And you had literacy tests and state-sanctioned intimidation to keep people of color from voting, which would become known as Jim Crow laws. One small bright spot during this period was when women finally gained access to the ballot box after the passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920. However, this bright spot was significantly dulled since this only benefited white women. Women of color were still mostly unable to vote. I was having a discussion with someone today as we talked about voter suppression. And it turns out that in Mississippi, until recently, they had things like, I want to say recently, I'm talking about as recent as when Obama first won the election. In Mississippi, there were strict rules about how to vote, about what you could do to vote. And one of them was this very same literacy test. And you'd think, okay, so big deal, everybody can read and write. No, not quite. Because in some states, you had a lot of people of color that didn't have some of the privileges that non-colored people had. So let me put it in black and white, literally. Black people, the majority were not literate, and the majority of white people were, just because of what was available. And this was something that carried over from the back in the days of slavery. So, very little had changed, and the changes that were in place or being put in place were slow coming and slowly enforced. Now, with that said, back to demandthevote.com. They said Jim Crow was the law of the land until 1965, when the fight for civil rights, led by people like Septima Clark and John Lewis and Martin Luther King, culminated in the passage of the Voting Rights Act. Now, officially, America took a significant step towards an inclusive democracy where all voices could be heard to shape its future. Unfortunately, there was still much work to be done. The progressive movement, unfortunately, could not capitalize on the success of the Voting Rights Act to strengthen and entrench a truly free and fair electoral system in America. Now, again, this was in the 1960s, which, let's face it, wasn't that long ago. I was born in the 1970s. And you can tell by looking, I'm not that old. Now, unfortunately, due to the racist mechanisms within our current form of government, specifically the Electoral College, Republican President George W. Bush lost the popular vote but won the Electoral College in 2004. Go figure. So some have argued, why do we have the Electoral College? Why not just get rid of the Electoral College? That way the vote is by the people and just by the people. And whatever the people say, that's how it goes. But I guess you'd have to understand how the Electoral College works. And that's for another night. It may be linked, but that's for another night. Subsequently, this president, elected by the minority of Americans, nominated two conservative judges, John Roberts and Samuel Alito. And they were appointed to the Supreme Court in 2005 and 2006. And in 2013, the 5 conservative judges gutted the Voting Rights Act with their ruling on Shelby County versus Holder, paving the way for a new raft of voter suppression laws. Tell you, if you don't know the history, you don't quite know where it is that we stand or where we're going. Overnight, Republican-controlled legislatures moved swiftly to make it harder to vote. Sadly, this is a trend that has accelerated and has been exacerbated by aggressive Republican gerrymandering and bad faith arguments about non-existent voter fraud, or the big lie, regarding the 2020 presidential election. As of July 22, 2021, over 400 bills were introduced in 49 states that were singularly focused on restricting the right to vote or contained restrictions within a larger bill. 30 of them have become law and will prevent people from voting. There were 400 bills, 30 have become law. I guess you could say law of numbers, right? Or just almost 10%. Now, you'd have to ask the question, if this thing exists as demandthevote.com is saying that it does, who then stands to benefit and who is being targeted? Because it exists. So if it exists for a reason. What is that reason would be the question. And who put it there? Well, basically we've kind of figured out the who put it there, the how it got there part. But who is targeted? Who is it that is on the radar when you start talking voter suppression? And when we come from the break, we're going to look into that. But before we go off on the break, I want to remind you of the book, the audio book. Yep. My very first narrated audiobook, recently released and available on Amazon and Audible. So all you need to do, the book is called Empowered. Let me go ahead and show it to you. It's called Empowered. Essential concepts and strategies every woman should know about self-defense. And it is written by Jonathan Field, but narrated, the audiobook is narrated by yours truly, me. So it's available right now. You can just go to Amazon, you can go to Audible. If you have difficulty finding it, don't worry. Just go to kevinstew.com. There's a link right there that takes you to where you can purchase the book, the audiobook. So get your download today and share, give it to someone as a gift. If you don't want it for yourself, give it to someone as a gift. You will not, and I repeat, not be disappointed. It's called Empowered, Essential Concepts and Strategies Every Woman Should Know About Self-Defense. Get your copy today. We'll be right back.
Pulsey Media Group, innovative streaming and recording, has done it again. A new way to get your business in full view of your neighborhood consumer through AdShare TV. It's available in your neighborhood today. It's easy. Just call us 754-999-6020. Become a host today and place a TV monitor in a strategic location so it's easy to see. Get a 1-minute video ad or longer that plays anywhere in our network. Can't be a host? No problem. For a few dollars, we'll run your 30-second video ad. A host can run announcement specials like buy one get one free or discount ads. Let's turn your flyers into a 30-second video with music or a voiceover, or let us create and run your video ad with a spokesperson. Take advantage of our early enrollment discount. Join us today. Your ad will be seen at least 30 times per day in your AdShare TV neighborhood. It's easy. Just call us 754-999-6020. AdShare TV, part of Pulsey Media Group.
In school, I learned a lot. Chemistry, I learned that no one likes me. In English, I learned that I'm disgusting. And in physics, I learned that I'm a loser.
Today in school, I learned that I'm ugly and useless. And in gym, I learned that I'm pathetic and a joke. In history, I learned that I'm trash.
Today in school, I learned that I have no friends. In English, I learned that I make people sick. And at lunch, I learned that I sit on my own because I smell. In chemistry, I learned that no one likes me.
In biology, I learned that I'm fat and stupid.
In English,
And in math, I learned that I'm trash.
the only thing I didn't learn in school today,
The only thing I didn't learn today
The only thing I didn't learn
It's why no one ever helps.
Kids witness bullying every day. They want to help, but they don't know how. Teach them how to stop bullying and be more than a bystander at stopbullying.gov. A message from the Ad Council.
Ladies, lovers of the music, it is here, the brand spanking new album from Ed Robinson and Ian Sweetness, a tribute to Teddy Pendergrass. Amazing. 10 blazing tracks, 2 amazing singers going hit for hit, classic for classic. A tribute to Teddy Pendergrass, Ian Sweetness, Ed Robinson. Oh man. is out now. Available everywhere. iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your music, it is there. A tribute to Teddy Pendergrass, brand spanking new, Ian Sweetness, Ed Robinson. Ladies, gentlemen, you've got to have this in your collection. Get it now. Available everywhere. Bruv, my last baby already gone off to college, mate. Is what this is send come gimme, man. Is a big album still, I love it. Big up Ed Robinson, Ian Sweetness, but this better come with a contraceptive.
It's Christina representing for DJ Kevin. You see me, I say, I don't know the boss. You see me, I say, DJ Kevin's Chew and the night shift radio show. Yo, it thing at the thing, turn up the thing loud. Whoa, DJ Kevin's Chew have the heart of a champion. Never underestimate, just choose him. The silver line behind the dark clouds. DJ Kevin's Chew believing, and that's no doubt. Salute the night shift radio show. Christina, it's a hot it up. Loud. Kill the beast.
Headed down this road, don't know where it leads to. I put on my coat, hoping that I'll see you. There's some things I've learned in my life. I need my time, but every time they go, it's been a minute since we last spoke. I hope things ain't different. I still visit where we used to hang out. Hey Scout, I'll be at the lookout. Headed down this road, don't know where it leads to. I put on my coat, hoping that I'll see you. Headed down this road, don't know where it leads to. I put on my coat, hoping that I'll see you. And even if I don't, life has a way of working out. Right now I'm headed home while taking my old route. There you go, it's been a minute since we last spoke. I hope things ain't different. I still visit. Hey Scout, I'll be at the lookout. Headed down this road, don't know where it leads to. I put on my coat, hoping that I'll see you. Headed down this road, don't know where it leads to. I put on my coat.
The sound of Rachel Davy Lee bringing us back from the break. A track called Put On My Coat. Welcome back to the broadcast. This is Night Shift with DJ Kevin Stew, Community and Finance Night. And tonight we're looking at vote suppression. So, before the break, I had asked a question. Who benefits? Who are the targets? Well, I asked two questions. Who benefits from vote suppression and who are the targets of vote suppression? Well, let's address the second question first. And that is, who are the targets? Now, believe it or not, surprise, surprise, people of color are disproportionately affected by voter suppression compared to white voters. But it impacts both groups. Also, voter suppression affects women, queer, and trans folk, disabled, low income, and unhoused, elderly, and college students. These restrictive laws aim to stop these groups from building broad-based fusion coalitions as part of a moral movement to confront racial and economic inequity. So, the second question, who benefits from voter suppression? Well, the main benefactors of voter suppression are Republican lawmakers and the corporate donors that fund them. In countries like Jamaica, that I don't know which you would refer to as the Republican Party and which you'd refer to as a Democratic Party. But as far as I know, both main political parties engage in the practice of voter suppression. It has been a thing that I heard about all my young days, where you'd have people who actually never went out to vote. Well, I guess it wouldn't be really voter suppression, more like just voter illegalities. So it was more than just about suppressing a particular vote, but the corruption of the voting system, the electoral system. I guess in this case, in the United States, as we're addressing it tonight, is more along the lines of a part of that whole corruption. And it is more along the lines of suppressing a particular vote. A vote that could possibly easily tilt the favor in one way or another. And in this case, it would be along the lines of the disenfranchised. Because apparently, they're the ones hurt the most. The people who have racial inequality, the people who suffer from economic inequality. And like it or not, that is the majority of America. It's the majority of those in Jamaica. So I have Jamaican roots. I can speak to Jamaica. That is where I grew up. That's the experience I had. So I can make reference to that. Anybody else listening to this broadcast may be able to add another type of reference. Well, if you can, go ahead. The phone lines are open. 773-789-STEW. 773-789-7839. You can call, text, WhatsApp, Telegram. They all work. And you're encouraged to use the medium. Use up the telephone line. 773-789-7839. All right, so bills that aim to restrict the right to vote are only introduced by Republican lawmakers and passed in Republican-controlled legislatures with little or no Democratic support. And these bills are only signed into law by Republican officials. Now, I can tell you, that was something I didn't know up until coming across this particular article put out by demandthevote.com. The majority of the country supports the policies of Democratic Party, of the Democratic Party. And when Democrats turn out at the polls, Democrats tend to win. In a healthy democracy, a political party will examine why they lost an election and adjust their platform to appeal to more voters. However, the Republican Party has chosen to stop Democratic voters from exercising their right to vote instead. What the Republicans did in Georgia after they lost January 5, 2021, in January 5, 2021, provides a brazen example. Respondents of these laws rely on the false narrative that these restrictions are necessary to protect the integrity of our elections from voter fraud. Funny, right? The problem is, it's trying to prevent something that didn't exist. Justin Levitt's 2014 study found 31 cases between the years of 2000 to 2014, one of 1 billion votes. And if you need to see proof, you can read the Brennan Center for Justice's executive report on debunking the voter fraud myth and refuting the myth of voter fraud yet again. These 2 articles. And after Republican officials and right-wing talking heads shrieked voter fraud after their favored presidential candidate lost in the November 3, 2020 general election, their own attorney general admitted there was none to be found. Furthermore, election officials across the country asserted there was no widespread fraud of any kind. Even former President Trump's own officials declared in the most secure election, it was the most secure election in U.S. history. So, in the midst of talking about this fraud, this suppression, what are we talking about? What does that look like, really? You have voter ID laws, where proponents of voter ID laws claim that anyone can get an ID, and many states offer them for free. However, free IDs have hidden costs. It turns out that really and truly nothing comes for free. Somebody has to pay. And these are not always easy to obtain. Not everyone has a car or lives close to an agency that provides IDs. And even if they do, people may not be able to afford to take a day off from work to get an ID, or afford to pay for the documents needed to get a free ID, right? So it's not really free, you're paying for documents, again, a cost. A study found that between 9,000 and 23,000 registered voters were deterred from voting in Wisconsin in the 2016 election. Now, there's also purging the voter rolls. Notorious vote suppressor, former Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach, or Kobach, how is his name pronounced? It's Kobach. He has been successfully sued by the ACLU multiple times for suppressing the vote. Created Crosscheck. Crosscheck purports to be a benevolent program that compares voter roll data from state to state and removes duplicate entries to clean up the voter rolls. But a Stanford study found that for every legitimate match Crosscheck finds, it produces nearly 200 false positives. This results in voters showing up to vote only to find that they have been purged and are now unable to exercise their right to vote. Another purging method is use it or lose it. States such as Ohio and Georgia purge voters from the voter rolls if they do not vote after a specific period of time, which results in voters unable to vote. Then there's limited early voting. Nearly every election is held on a Tuesday. Early voting gives voters who may not be able to get time off from work, have family obligations, or any other legitimate reason, an opportunity to vote before the official election day. States with competently implemented no-excuse early voting systems in place can see higher turnout numbers during the early voting period, which will aid in shorter lines on election day, allowing more voters to vote. If you cut early voting, it means everyone is forced to vote on election day, which can lead to extremely long lines, which can suppress the vote. You see how that works? Then there's felony disenfranchisement. In every state but 2, voters automatically lose their right to vote when they are convicted of a felony. The concept of prison is that a person serves their time and their debt to society is paid. Adding obstacles to voting afterwards essentially extends their prison sentence because they do not have the same rights as every other citizen. Or if you're a voter with a felony, a felony conviction, who needs help to vote or with voting, you can check Restore Your Vote. It's a program that should be able to aid you in the process of getting back that right. And this too was something that I had questioned at one point because it didn't seem to make sense to me. And this really comes back to the whole prison system on a whole, why it was created, and if it does what it is created to do, then why have people who have been through the prison system not been given a restorative position in society? In that you go to prison, you lose your right to vote because you did something illegal that warranted prison time. But if the prison is in place to effect reform, then after doing your time, you should have been reformed. And if you are allowed to leave prison, that means that they understand that you have done your time and you are able to now reintegrate into society, which means you have done what you needed to do to get your rights back. So why can't you vote? One of the things that I found interesting as it relates to the prison system is the race of people that have been incarcerated in the United States. You have black people being considered as a minority, but in the prison culture, people of color seem to be the majority. So, are you saying that people of color are more? It's more likely that people of color are criminals than white people? How does that really work? And so, when we don't ask questions like these, and we don't look deeper into things like these, then the concept of voter suppression and aspects relating to it seem foreign. And so when it comes to this aspect of voter suppression, felony disenfranchisement, a lot of people don't get it. But you're looking at a little piece of the picture. You need to look at the big picture. If you need to look at the big picture in pieces, that's one thing. But you can't just look at that piece and say, this is the big picture. Another type of vote suppression is sabotaging election infrastructure. In May of 2020, Republican President Donald Trump, installed a GOP loyalist and top Trump donor with conflicts of interest and zero experience to head up the U.S. Post Office as Postmaster General. Trump continued to publicly disparage the Postal Service, while his Postmaster General sabotaged the post office from within by removing sorting machines, cutting overtime, firing or reassigning experienced postal veterans, removing post office boxes, and changing procedure for the sole purpose of causing delays. According to demandthevote.com, Trump also held up coronavirus relief for Americans because legislators wanted to include funding for the post office in the aid package. Many Americans are hoping to vote by mail in 2020 because of the September 12, 6.4 plus million Americans have been infected with the coronavirus, and 193,000 plus have died, according to reports. Then there's gerrymandering. We've all heard the term gerrymandering, and I'm pretty sure that the majority of us don't know what that is. But that's cool, because according to this, in demandthevote.com, we get to explain it a little bit. So, drawing electoral districts in order to favor one party, and in this case, the Republicans, after the 2010 census, the GOP initiated Operation Red Map in order to draw districts favorable to GOP candidates. This resulted in Democrats often getting the most votes, but the GOP getting the most seats, which there's an illustration to show how that works. Gerrymandering is one of the greatest threats to our democracy because it denies legitimate representation in government. So, to give you an idea of what we're talking about, we have, let me fix this right here. We have this image, and I lost a piece of this, so let me go ahead and fix it really quickly as you look on. Here we go. There we are. Quick fix. So this is gerrymandering explained, and there are 3 different ways to divide 50 people into 5 districts. So the first image shows 50 people, 60% blue, 40% red. In the first perfect representation, you have 3 blue districts and 2 red districts, which would be a fair representation of the 60-40 split. And with that, the blue wins. When you look at excuse me. When you look at the second compact but unfair representation, you end up having 5 blue districts and no red districts. So blue wins. In the third, where it is neither compact nor is it fair, this image shows 2 blue districts and 3 red districts, and red wins. But remember where we started. There was a 60-40 split, 60% blue. So how is it that you would have 2 blue districts and 3 red districts when you had more blue than red? And so this is how gerrymandering works. Now, to be fair, this is one area where you can also point the finger at Democrats, but not to the extent that Republicans do it. And even if this was an instance of both sides do it, only Republicans are passing laws that limit access to ballot box in order to enhance the impact of their partisan gerrymanderers. It's crazy, but it's there. There's also underfund election day resources. Now, if the state, county, or district does not provide adequate funding to properly staff or equip its polling places, this will result in longer lines and longer wait times. People may not be able to physically or financially stand in the line for hours and give up, which effectively denies them the right to vote. Yeah. So, because they can't afford to be there, then they have to leave. There was a video of the Georgia Georgia June 9, 2020 primary, after they closed polling places where they failed to provide enough provisional ballots and install defective voting machines, and thousands were disenfranchised. You can check it out. Just go to demandthevote.com. And that's where this bit of information that I'm presenting to you right now is coming from. There's also defying the law. And if voter suppression in and of itself isn't defying the law, I don't know what else could be defying the law. If a voter is in line to vote before polls close, then they have the right to stay in line until they can cast their ballot. But sometimes election officials will close a polling place the second it hits the official closing time, which is actually in violation of election law. During the June 23, 2020 Kentucky primary, election officials closed the only polling place in Jefferson County at 6 p.m. despite voters still being in line to vote. Isn't that crazy? But it's what happens. And that's breaking the law. The question is, who gets prosecuted for this? When people break the law, they end up getting prosecuted, right? Who gets prosecuted for this? We don't hear about anything like any consequences to such actions. And so you have to ask the question, okay, then why is it considered illegal if there are no charges being brought and no consequences being meted out? How is it illegal? Or is there a difference between something being illegal and something being accepted? We're going to take another quick little break. When we come back, we're going to talk some more and look at some more ways that the vote can be suppressed. As we look at vote suppression tonight in Community and Finance, right here on the Night Shift with DJ Kevin Stew. We're going to be right back after these messages. Matthew 28:19 says, "Go ye therefore and teach all nations." With this in mind and encouragement received during a South Florida media conference, The Church Links was birthed. The Church Links is an interdenominational worship service portal for churches, providing the tools to spread the word through technology in a cost-effective way. The Church Links, www.dahchurchlinx.com. Your links to worship and praise.
Making great music is one thing, sharing it with the world, that's another. Let the professionals at Reggae Global Entertainment help you to another level. Specializing in artist management, booking, public relations and marketing, and promotion, Reggae Global Entertainment can help you with event planning, websites, photography, and video production, press releases, legal services, and graphic design. They can even help you with music production, so you can get the sound that you want every time. Call Reggae Global Entertainment at 954-804-8199. That's 804-8199. Or visit them online at reggaeglobalentertainment.com.
MRE Entertainment, in association with VPAL Distribution, presents the brand new hit single.
I'm Robert French, and you're listening to my new song, Every Day of My Life.
Now available on all major digital platforms.
Every day of my life will be just loving you. Spend the rest of my life always and just loving you. Every day of my life will be just loving you. Spend the rest of my life always
in the moment is priceless, consider the ability to share that moment. If you can video it, you can broadcast it. And Pulse E-Media Group has the tools you need. Weddings, birthdays, funerals, graduations, church services, parties, seminars, you name it. Pulse E-Media Group can provide you with a secure medium controlled by you to broadcast your event. Contact us at www.pulseemediagroup.com for more information. Pulse E-Media Group, when being in the moment is priceless.
Yes. Akar Mantino, I'm making notes right now. You are locked in to DJ Kevin Stew on the night shift.
Now, my brother, listen to me. Oh, yeah.
And when we say listen, we mean listen up, go. Red Fox, yo, Baldy, and not say me afraid. But soldier not trust cowards. Sell your outfit, not the yes, the whole of them above what you wear. Come a country, turn flowers. Wolf in a shade, clothing bone a coward. No, we no afraid. Cause jobless will be the powers. No shut up after that, when your feet up in a the hours. What you wear. My country, turn flowers. Wolf in a shade, clothing bone a coward. Yeah, what? Some sell you won't already. Some in the process. Keep your head in base far and check your friends, them both sex. Mentally unsteady, enough of them under stress. All they think about them belly. White squall mindset. Jack on down. Many but only few here. Too busy for them selling information they must share. Then get a one clock and a piece of food for clear. Sell you out to the dark. See them there? But I not semi-afraid. But soldier not trust cowards. Sell you out for nothing. Yes, the whole of them above what you wear. My country turn flowers. Wolf in a shape, clothing but a coward. No, we no afraid. God jobless with the powers. No shadow after that when you fit up in the hours. What you wear. My country turn flowers. Wolf in a shape, clothing but a coward. Tell them they give me and rates enough for them not do it for no. Fearful of them head the devil them go bout. Sell your out for face of bread. Remember say me warn you. I know every man that dread is a rasta. Illusion is real but it not real. Easy. Remember what you think is what you feel. Check it. Pussycat a try to take the lion mail. Imagine. Rubber sword come and pose up like a snail. But I don't say me afraid. But soldier not trust cowards. Send the out for nothing cause they won't let them above us. What you wear. My country turn the floor.
This is on a Red Fox bringing us back from the break.
No, we no afraid.
Track called We Not Afraid.
No shut after that we have feet up in the hours. What you wear. My country turn flowers. Wolf in a shape.
And there are some people that are not afraid when it comes to this whole
no soldiers never cry.
Voter suppression thing.
Even when the tide get tight, with the whole
and they speak up and they speak out and they go ahead and they do whatever they need to do to make sure that the proper information gets out and the exposure of things like voter suppression gets known. Because let's face it, there are some people that still say, hey, you know, there's no such thing as vote suppression. And in reality, there is. Now, going down the list of vote suppression techniques and or what vote suppression could look like, there is the closing of ID offices. In states requiring specific forms of ID to vote, voters without it must go through the process of obtaining it. But on more than one occasion, officials have closed agency offices that issue the IDs voters need, which effectively denies them the right to vote. And this is simply just by denying them the ability to get the ID that they need. Then there's the mis and disinformation. What does that look like? Well, according to demandthevote.com, voters receive official-looking mailers with incorrect information on them, like deadlines, polling places, and election times and dates. A prime example. During the 2011 Wisconsin recall election, the Koch-based group Americans for Prosperity sent mailers to predominantly Democratic areas, telling them to make sure their absentee ballots were in by August 11. The actual deadline was August 9. Furthermore, the Republican Party had partnered with misinformation or disinformation networks like Fox News and OANN and Newsmarks in order to erode faith in our entire electoral system. Then there's voter intimidation. In 1981, Republicans sent armed off-duty police officers into minority neighborhoods during the New Jersey gubernatorial race, claiming it was to ensure ballot security. But what it actually did was intimidate minority voters from casting their vote. This led to the 1982 consent decree, which barred the GOP from engaging in this type of activity. However, in 2018, the consent decree was allowed to expire, and the Republican Party swiftly moved into action to prepare for large-scale voter intimidation in 2020, with the goal of recruiting 50,000 poll watchers. These are individuals who were to deploy at polling stations visited by likely Democratic voters with the intent to challenge their right to vote, or armed vigilante groups terrorizing voters like one in Arizona during the 2022 midterms. Then you have off-year elections. Off-year elections have historically low turnout. So by selecting elections on off years, it makes it easier for well-organized and well-funded interest groups to push their preferred candidates and policy initiatives through. Then you have caging lists. A political party will send registered letters. The addresses of people of the opposite party, and then if the letters are returned undeliverable, then they challenge the legitimacy of that voter. The reality is that the voter may have just moved or never updated their address. And so you have caging lists. Now, some of these things, I had no clue that these were some of the actions or practices that people would engage in when it comes to elections. But I guess you do anything for the win, right? There was an article put out by CNBC.com, and this was yesterday. And it mentions, it's entitled, Election Officials Combat Voter Intimidation Across U.S. as Extremist Groups Post Armed Militia at Some Polls. This is here in 2022. And it goes on to say, a pair of armed and masked men in tactical gear stood guard at ballot drop boxes in Mesa, Arizona on October 21 as people began early voting for the 2022 midterm elections. They belong to an election monitoring group called Clean Elections USA, which has echoed former President Donald Trump's false claims that the 2020 election was stolen. The group says it is watching early voting in select counties for signs of fraud, but its presence caused unease among Maricopa County voters who saw these drop box watchers as a blatant attempt at voter intimidation. Uninformed vigilantes outside Maricopa County's drop boxes are not increasing election integrity. Instead, they are leading to voter intimidation complaints. Maricopa County election official Bill Gates and Stephen Richer said in a joint statement the next day. A U.S. District Court judge appointed by Trump, Michael Liberty, ordered members of Clean Elections USA to stay at least 75 feet away from drop boxes and not follow or speak to voters. They were also told they couldn't openly carry weapons. The ruling was in response to a temporary restraining order filed by two voter advocacy groups, alleging the poll watchers were trying to bully and intimidate lawful Arizona voters. We are deeply concerned about the safety of individuals who are exercising their constitutional right to vote and who are lawfully taking their early ballot to a drop box, Gates and Richards said. While Arizona has seen a host of voter intimidation reports, the state is certainly not alone. Fears about voter intimidation and suppression have been brewing nationwide since the 2020 presidential election, when Trump refused to accept his loss and accused several states of voter fraud. The rising rhetoric has tensions running high going into Tuesday's midterms. 2 in 5 U.S. voters said they were worried about threats of violence or voter intimidation at the polls, according to a new Reuters ISO poll. The same disinformation about election fraud that fueled the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot is the same disinformation that's threatening political violence related to our elections. Mary McCord, the executive director of the Institute of Constitutional Advocacy and Protection and former federal prosecutor, said in an interview with PBS NewsHour. McCord said, "And by political violence, I do not just mean physical violence. I mean intimidation, voter intimidation and threats and harassment against our electoral workers, aggressive recruitment of poll watchers from groups like Proud Boys and Oath Keepers to be really a force for intimidation at the polls, and other types of really anti-democratic processes that are being driven, again, by the same disinformation and lies about the 2020 election." President Joe Biden noted the rise in political violence in a speech Wednesday night, calling on voters to go to the polls next week to help preserve democracy. He said, "There is an alarming rise in the number of people in this country condoning political violence or simply remaining silent. In our bones, we know democracy is at risk. But we also know this: it is in our power to preserve our democracy." His remarks also came on the heels of the violent attack against House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul, in their San Francisco home. Republican Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said the country was facing an environment of fascism, which is not something that you would associate with a democracy, is it? And so I guess democracy is really being threatened. This type of intimidation at the polls brings us to Jim Crow, Ocasio-Cortez said in an October 28 interview on MSNBC's All In with Chris Hayes. It brings us back and harkens back to a very unique form of American apartheid that is not that long past ago. Again, we're talking about the 60s. With political violence and voter suppression concerns at an all-time high, federal agencies and non-profits are taking the threat to election integrity with heightened seriousness. The Department of Justice stepped up efforts in recent weeks to protect voters and election workers. The agency launched an election threat task force in July 2021 to ensure voters are safe at the polls and to investigate intimidation of election workers. In early October, the FBI warned voters about possible election crimes ahead of the midterms, emphasizing its efforts to educate voters on their rights and encouraging them to report violations. Election crimes fall under three broad categories, according to the FBI: ballot or voter fraud, campaign finance violations, and the violation of civil rights, including voter suppression or voter intimidation. The Department of Justice has made a point of underscoring its hard-line position against voter intimidation. The Justice Department has an obligation to guarantee a free and fair vote by anyone who is qualified to vote and will not permit voters to be intimidated. Attorney General Merrick Garland said during an October 24 press briefing, "The Brennan Center for Justice, a non-profit law and public policy institute, identified 10 states at risk of disruption due to the volume of false allegations and anti-voter activity. The 10 states are Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Texas, and Wisconsin. Many states have instituted additional safeguards to help ease concerns in the lead up to and on election day." So, up until this point, up until tomorrow, election day, midterm election day, there has been efforts to prevent voter suppression. In New York, Attorney General Letitia James issued voter protection guidance to local boards of election and law enforcement. The 15-page guide outlines the constitutional and legal protections afforded to voters, as well as what is permitted at polling stations and what is not. James also established a statewide election protection hotline for voters. Excuse me. Now, voting is a fundamental right and integral to the sanctity of our democracy. And I urge anyone who encounters obstacles to contact my office. I will not allow anyone to threaten the right to vote in New York State. This is what James said in a statement. Similarly, New Jersey Attorney General Matthew Platkin established a voter protection initiative to identify and address any voting rights or civil rights violations in early voting at the polls. And he says to ensure that every eligible voter will be able to cast a ballot and that anyone who attempts to interfere with the voting process will be held accountable to the full extent of the law. Nonpartisan protection hotlines are also available in Illinois, Indiana, North Carolina, and Montana, in addition to hotlines run by the American Civil Liberties Union at both the state and national levels. Election day voters can call local election offices to report any complaints. We always hope and expect that elections will run smoothly and voters will not encounter any problems. However, we know that issues do arise and we are on standby to help voters resolve these issues and make sure their voices are heard. ACLU West Virginia Advocacy Director Eli Baumwell. This is what he said in a statement, according to CNBC. So, when you think, hey, America, the land of the free, people have the right to vote and their votes count. And then you hear something like this. I'm pretty sure the majority would think, hey, this is something that went on maybe early in history, in American history. But not today, not in 2022. But here it is. In 2022, you have men dressed up wearing tactical gear and masks, claiming to be looking out for voter fraud, when in fact they're engaging in the process of voter intimidation in order to suppress the vote. Really? Here's the funny thing. When I look at the image of these two gentlemen mentioned in Arizona, if these men were black men dressed this way, I believe there would be a problem. Not to make it a racial thing, but time and time again, we see people, well, let me just summarize it, just wrap it up in a nice little bow. We recognize that the playing field is not level. And so what one set of society, one aspect of society can do, another cannot. So if you are of a lighter hue, you manage to get away with certain things more than people of a darker hue. And we've seen it time and time again. We look at our prison systems and you look at the demographics, you will see it. And so, when you think voter suppression, you need to think on the big picture. You need to ask who stands to benefit, who gets targeted. I can quickly run through some forms of voter suppression. And this is according to Voting Right. Voting Rights. What is this site? Let me look at it again. It is votingrightsalliance.com. That's what it is. Votingrights.org. Votingrightsalliance.org. And they have a list of what voter suppression looks like. You have strict voter photo ID laws, closing of DMVs in strict voter ID law states, failure to accept government-issued state, university, and college student IDs, no early voting cuts, no Sunday souls to the polls, early voting, harsh requirements, punishments for voter registration groups, tough deputy registrar requirements, harsh voter registration compliance deadlines, failure to timely process voter registrations, cuts to election day, same-day elections, polling place reductions or consolidations, polling place relocations. You know, they can move a polling place and not get the news out, and that will cause problems. Inadequate or poorly trained staffing at polls, inadequate number of functioning machines, optical scanners or electronic polling books, running out of ballots at polling sites, no paper ballots, failure to accept Native American tribal IDs. Let me pause right there. When you have a set of people that are indigenous to a land, but yet still their ID does not count, that goes way beyond voter suppression. That speaks to something else. Although not for tonight's broadcast, but come on. That spells racism right through. Failure to place polling sites on Native American lands, barring Native American voters through residential address requirements for Native American lands which have P.O. boxes, refusal to place polling sites on college campuses, lack of available public transportation to polling sites, excessive voter purging. We talked about that just now. Disparate racial treatment at polling sites, student voting restrictions as in residencies, ex-felon disenfranchised laws, requiring payment of fines or fees as a condition to vote restorations. Crazy. Excessive use of inactive voter lists. No public outreach or notification to voters placed on inactive lists. No curbside voting. Barriers to assistance by family members or others for voters. Deceptive practices like flyers and robocalls. Voter intimidation. Implementing law enforcement personnel or immigration officers. Wait, why would immigration officers be a tactic of intimidation when you'd have to be a citizen to vote? What are they getting at? Racial gerrymandering, police at polling places. I don't quite get how police at polling places would be a form of voter suppression. Because then that would speak to something else. Yet again, there's voter challengers at polls, use of suspense lists, absentee ballot short return deadlines, complicated absentee ballot requirements, exact match requirements for signatures or other information. Now, everybody knows that where you might sign your signature one way at this moment, you have two documents to sign and you're signing them one behind the other. And you sign one and you sign the second and it looks slightly different. You want to tell me that they have to look exactly the same in order for you to vote? And that's definitely some tactics used in vote suppression. Because if it is done for one group of people, but not for another, you know. You have jailed person pre-conviction denied right to register and or vote. The DOJ demanding voter records. Employers not providing time off or enough time. Long lines. And failure to assist or accommodate voters displaced by natural disasters. These are all forms of voter suppression. If you have experienced anything like this, if you are experiencing anything like this, you have a right to speak up. Because as a citizen of a country, you have a right to participate in things like this, like voting. If it is a country where there is a democracy and the choosing of representatives is done by public vote, then you have a right to vote. And if there's anybody intimidating you or taking away that right, then, as it is stated, it's illegal. You need to speak up. You need to call them out. And as we live in a time where everybody is a reporter because of social media, go ahead and report. Report. And I think the more we speak up, the more we shout out, the more we point the finger and expose, then the less things like this will happen. Or will it? Because if speaking out and nothing then happens, you get discouraged and you don't want to speak out anymore. So, as we're encouraged to speak out, those who are encouraging us to speak out, we're encouraging you to take action. Kicking off musical therapy. This is the sound of Cesar. The track is called Morning in Gideon.
Alright. Well, it's morning in Gideon, living in a this year time. DJ Kevin Stew are on the radio every time. Endemic, and if you look behind the mix and match the riff and check the mix, the greatest of effects we risk is really soul and mind the mix. So tell me this, how can we fix the world for all the future kids? We can't do it, just blaming it and all them dirty valley tricks. Oh, what time are we for shine and change the script line after line? But every time we get the light, we do it the same. I wonder why. Keep your heads high, keep your heads high. Tomorrow's sun will rise. More people are awakening to a higher vibes. Those who have awakened will stop take them medicine. I know that we are prescribed. When we all are meds, that don't mean we all are vibes. Them say science in a lab and we say science on the mind. Take care of your temple is divine. So don't you fear them pandemic or don't you swear a pandemic. The real problem is systemic. The struggle is not endemic. And if you look behind the mix and match the riff and check the mix, the greatest of the face we risk is really soul and mind. Let me tell you, it's simple to fix the world for all the future kids. We can't do it with theories of trickle down economics. The greatest lie that ever stick was just the poor and you for it. When scarcity is just a trust, millions are starving food a bitch. Keep your heads high, keep your heads high, keep your heads high. Baby, keep your heads high. Keep your heads high. Keep your heads high. Keep your heads high.
The sound of Cesar. Track called Morning in Gideon.
So the more things change, the more them remain the same. Yeah.
This is the sound of the newly married, newlywed Ed Robinson.
All just drains away.
He tied the knot this past Friday.
With pain, but come tomorrow, the joy returns again.
This track is called Don't Forget to Remember.
And after all the fuss and all the fight, everything they put us through, and after all the cuss and all the suss, the one thing to do is don't forget to remember, come November, their world remains the same. Nothing will change.
remember, come November, nothing on earth will change. Nothing ever changed. No.
Pull up that DJ Kevin Sentinel say that.
So the more things change, the more them remain the same. Yeah. Even though it rains today, yet come tomorrow, it all just drains away. All fades away. Today might fill with pain, but come tomorrow, the joy returns again. The joy returns again. And after all the fuss and all the fight, everything they put us through, and after all the cuss and all the suss, the one thing to do is don't forget to remember, come November, their world remains the same. Nothing will change. I'm hoping that you remember, come November, nothing on earth will change. Nothing ever changed, no. The lies that them tell today, come tomorrow, they'll tell them lies again. Same lies, oh yeah. The system that's in place to keep us in our place will never change. No. Cause after all the fight, they'll take your rights, and we know it's true. And after all the talk, we march and walk, the one thing to do is don't forget to remember, come November, their world remains the same. Nothing ever changed, no. I'm hoping that you remember, come November, it's still the same. Nothing on earth will change. Nothing ever changed, no. Round and round and round, this old world still goes around. Round and round and round, but sooner or later they'll feed the ground. Round and round and round, when will my people start to learn? What goes up comes down. Who start the fire will get burned. Don't forget to remember, come November, their world remains the same. The more things changes, the more they remain the same. Yeah, I'm hoping that you remember, come November, please remember, nothing on earth will change. No. Don't forget to remember, come November, their world remains the same. The world will always remain the same. I'm hoping that you remember, come November.
It's a conscious party, a conscious party. Yeah.
If you're gonna be voting for a party,
It's a conscious,
I guess the best party to vote for is a conscious party, eh? This is a track called Conscious Party by Teacher D.
party from the first sound system turn on. Who no say yeah, say yeah. Yes, it's a conscious party with the music everybody want. Who no say yeah, say.
His name is Teacher D.
There are lots of things going on in life, so if you try and stress out my party vibe, I can't take it. No, I can't take it. No. So you see the places I go, you can feel the good vibes and flow. Rain or shine, we're at the door. You can't fake this. No. It's a conscious party I want. From the first sound system turn on. Who no say yeah, say yeah. Yes, it's a conscious party I want. With the music everybody want. Who no say yeah, say yeah. We are dancing in place, standing on our feet. Positive vibrations we need. And Mr. DJ, know your duty. This is a party and not a gun movie. I am not here to twist out my face. Positive vibrations, Rasta embrace. Before you make we push you out of the place. Pick up the pace, pick up the pace. It's a conscious party I want. From the first sound system turn on. Who knows say yeah, say yeah. Yes, it's a conscious party I want. With the music everybody want. Who knows say yeah, say yeah. This is a place where husbands meet their wives. So I want you to realize that a conscious song can save a life. So many people feeling depressed. Step up and the dance to get some righteousness. Now tell me why you want to try. Why you want to try and kill the vibe. It's a conscious party I want. From the first sound system turn on. Who knows say yeah, say yeah. Yes, it's a conscious party I want. With the music everybody want. Who knows say yeah, say yeah. Well, I'm gonna live my life the way I wanna live it.
This is on a Tony Roy.
My life the way I wanna live it.
Track called Live My Life.
I'm gonna live my life the way I wanna live it. Well, I'm gonna live my life the way I wanna live it. Watch this. One life me have to live and I'm gonna live it. Well, yes, one life me have to live and I'm gonna live it. Nice. One life. I get up every day and I give praise to the Almighty One. Give praises to guide and protect me in my going out. To guide and protect me in my coming in. 'Cause he's the King. All kings. Lords of lords. All lords. Conquering lion of the tribe of Judah. Well, gosh, so who, tell me who shall I fear? Well, gosh, live my life, live my life, live my life. Well, I'm gonna live my life the way I wanna live it. Well, gosh, I'm gonna live my life the way I wanna live it. Life today. I'm gonna live my life the way I wanna live it. Lord of mercy, live my life the way I wanna live it. Yes. So people wanna see me go down to the ground, Lord. But through the powers of the Most High, I'm still around. Yes. As long as I trust in Him, He will see me through. Yes. And He's always in front of me to pave the way. So, live my life, live my life, live my life, live my life, well, live my life, live my life, live my life, live my life. See clearly that they coming after me, but I'm ready, firm and strong, waiting for my enemy.
This is the sound of Anthony Malvo.
Back it in. If I dead them want me dead them not alone.
Track called Whom If You Trust.
I wish them rich blessings, but them want me to live on chicken back. But you are humble and I put a number two. My life should never concern you. We all know say the liberty no smooth.
That is a good question in these times.
But I not try to take my own. Yeah, when every man feel him for the good. Ah, your neighbor. When you think and your friend would have said you were cold. Who make you trust? Get you somebody now. Who make you trust? Get you somebody now. Who make you trust? Get you somebody now. Who make you trust? Nah.
for provide, and you are me friend, and you are free bad mind. So eyes, and your heart no clean. You are trying time for me dream. Talk about real, them make you question life. Who fi trust and how you fi survive? You wanna brother said you want with the price. Tell me how you trust them. And if it's up to me alone, me not have no friend. Then carry people business more than now they bust them. Carry passengers and them no give the youth no strength. Cause all them do a tear down the youths them. Come and pretend like your friend. True you have it and a spend. When it done you don't see them. But you are humble and a cut and a go through. My life should never concern you. We all know say the liberty no smooth. But no bad mind me for me fool. No. Gonna try to take my one. Yeah. When every man for your him for the goal. Ah, your neighbor. What you think and your friend would have said you want goal. Who make me just? Can't trust nobody now. Who make me just? Can't trust nobody now. Who make me just? Can't trust nobody now. Who make me just? How me for provide, and you are me friend, and you are free bad mind. So eyes, and your heart no clean. You are trying time for me dream. Talk about real, them make you question life. Who fi trust and how you fi survive? You wanna brother said you want me to wild, and I put a number two. My life should never concern you. We all know say the liberty no smooth. But no bad mind me fi me fool. No, and I try fi take my one. Yeah, when every man fi a him fi the goal. Oh yeah. Oh, your neighbor. What you think and your friend would have said you want goal.
This one is for my people, yeah. Sha-la-la-la.
This is the sound of Ginger. As Anthony Malva asked the question, who to be trusted? Ginger has a track called Day In, Day Out.
My people, yeah. My people, yeah. Day in, day out. Find ourselves running back against the wall. Day in, day out. Same cards, them a deal out, yes. Day in, day out. Find ourselves to be back against the wall. Day in, day out. Same cards, them a deal out, yes. If you love the people like I do, I'm talking to you. Your goodness and mercy for those who stay pure and true. Yes. And the ones who realize some of the things we've been through. So many centuries, still there is nothing new. I'm gonna live my life down to wipe away my people's frown. Fight the good fight till them leave my people alone. I would have march up in a row till them send my people home. Same old game they playing, got to let it be known, yeah. Day in, day out, find ourselves when we're back against the wall. Day in, day out, same times them a deal out, yes. Day in, day out, find ourselves when we're back against the wall. Day in, day out, same cards them a deal out.
This is the sound of Mr. Vegas. It's called Moral Decade Society.
We say substance over hype, 'cause we not put the wrong over right. And we say substance over hype, we not sell out people overnight. We're living in a moral decade society. Immorality becomes the priority. A minority a sing the reality. The majority not deal with no sanity. Forget a bus, you no need no clarity. Just dress outrageous, make everybody see. Might have no filter, it full of cavity. And hard drugs that cause fatality. So we say substance over hype, because we not put the wrong over right. And we say substance over hype, we not sell out people overnight. No way, missing up on them hype, and in a them must not stay right. No yeah, substance over hype, we not put darkness over light. There's gotta be a better way for humanity, 'cause we all have a responsibility. When we say we me a deal with plurality, remember quantity useless without quality. You can make a point without profanity. Dig deep 'cause you have the ability. Some people have the wrong mentality. It's all about the money, but that's idolatry. So man I live with the hype. Them now I work a big flip, them all like. Some girl I live with the hype. They wanna be a Kardashian look alike. But we say substance over hype, 'cause we not put the wrong over right. And we say substance over hype, we not sell out people overnight. You not to lose your way, yeah. Your way, yeah. Forget a payday, forget a payday. Don't lose your way, yeah, yeah. Don't lose your way, yeah. No way, no way. Don't lose your way, yeah. We're living in a moral decade society. Immorality becomes the priority. A minority a sing the reality. The majority not deal with no sanity. Forget a bus, you no need no clarity. Just dress outrageous, make everybody see. Might have no filter, it full of cavity. And hard drugs that cause fatality.
Mr. Vegas calling out people in this morally decayed society.
Then I work all day.
This is on Dean Fishback.
Then it's time to play. I'm gonna find my
A track called Grit.
She takes away the pain. That's all I needed to go again. Everything I'm needing is the love I am living for. I will always remember the days that were tough. I was thinking when times would get so hard. Grits in the morning, and I work all day. Grits in the evening, and it's time to play. I'm gonna find my baby. She takes away the pain. That's all I needed to go again. Life is what we make of it. Life is what we put in. And all of our love. There ain't no stopping now. Keep on pushing on. There ain't no stopping now. We keep on pushing on. Oh, we keep on pushing on.
As we push on also to close out this edition of the Night Shift to DJ Kevin Steele. It's community and finance tonight, and we looked at voter suppression. Believe me, it exists. It existed then and it exists today. The sound of Dean Fishback in the background. It's called Grits. As we part company, do remember, go out and exercise your right. Vote. Look out for members of your community as you're going out there to vote. Remember, your community is not just a development that you live in, but it spreads far and wide. So those that you pass on the bus, the plane, the boat, or the train, whether you walk, ride, or drive, these are members of your community. Do something good for one of them today, because you never know who's going to do something good for you tomorrow. My name is Kevin Stew, so I like to do it to you, for you, and with you every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday right here, kevinstew.com. All things being equal, all things being well. So I get to do it again tomorrow with healthy love. Thanks to the affiliates, thanks to the sponsors. Good morning, good afternoon, good day to you wherever you are in the world. From right here in South Florida, I bid you all a good night. Take care until we do it again. Blessings. Greetings and salutations, one and all. You're invited to tune in to the night shift with DJ Kevin Stew. It airs on Mondays with Community and Finance, Tuesdays with Healthy Love, and Wednesdays with Real Talk from 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Come spend some time interacting in the stew pot where we keep things bubbling and wind down in musical therapy. The Night Shift with DJ Kevin Stew is on kevinstew.com, where you're encouraged to have acceptance through enlightenment.